Hello, Paul Wilkinson here. Often I get asked how I first started learning to play the piano, so I thought it'd be quite nice to just to talk a little bit about how I started learning to play this instrument. So this is the early years, so it's a long story. but I always had an interest in music from being a 6, 7, 8-year-old, and then I think at some point, maybe before about the age of 10 or something like that, I think it was my dad just mentioned, would I like to learn the piano, and I jumped at the chance. I went to study with somebody who just lived round the corner from me, if I remember rightly. I was on I think her name was Caroline, and so I would go for piano lessons every week. She had a piano in her front room. She lived at home with her parents, so my dad would drop me off and he would disappear. At first he'd sit on the sofa, and then he would just wait outside in the car for me. And she'd give me a real solid grounding technically in playing the piano. Although it's fair to say her lessons were very uninspiring. It was all mechanistic. It was didactic, she would tell me, and I would repeat it back. It wasn't autodidactic in that sense. But she did give me a good grounding, and pretty quickly I realised I could sight read. So when I used to go to the lessons, she'd be like, "Oh, you've practised a lot this week," and I'd be thinking, "Oh, this is it. I haven't touched the piano." So at that point, I was playing some classical music as a 10, 11-year-old, and enjoying some of that. But I also loved pop music and started to hear things like Elton John and Billy Joel, Paul Carrack from Squeeze, later than Mike and the Mechanics. A little bit later on I would hear Sting. More about that in a bit. And so I was listening to all of this kind of music, really, really enjoying it. And me and my dad would go to W.H. Smith's and we would buy tapes. So things like Handel's Messiah. I really got into the Beethoven symphonies. I used to get obsessed with listening like the Fifth. Well, all the symphonies, but the Fifth, the Seventh, and the Ninth. And I loved all that kind of music. And I loved the joy of going to collect these tapes, because you would spend some time listening to them. You would spend time on these, as you remember, on these tapes. I kind of was in between when vinyl wasn't as popular, although we did have some vinyl as well, but maybe not quite as much as we had tapes then. So that's how and I loved that, and then I loved this classical music. I didn't understand it, but I enjoyed playing it, so I learned to play some basic Bach pieces and some Mozart. I started doing my grades, going up through my grades. But again, those lessons were just not that inspiring. And then a key moment for me, which my dad always reminds me of, is that I decided I wanted to stop. And he said, "Well, you have to tell her." And I didn't have the courage to tell her. I just couldn't, each week would go and I'm going to tell her. And obviously I didn't. And I never told her, And, but then something happened that really helped. She stopped teaching. She said she wasn't going to teach anymore. Now, at that point, I'd started to get a little bit of interest in playing popular music. I'd not quite come to playing jazz at that point, as a sort of a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. But I had this interest in playing pop music, so I would go to the music shop and buy all the pop books of the year and learn to play them. And of course, my ego was fed there at school and things, because people thought it was great, and I played in school concerts and productions and all that kind of thing. But then this took the opportunity to find a new teacher. So my dad rung somebody up who was like the regional exam board kind of, I don't know what you call, secretary basically, who dealt with all the exams in the area. And she gave my dad the number of somebody called Walter Smith. And Walter Smith was an old club organist, and piano player. And so Walter used to come to the house. I didn't go to him, so he would come to the house. And the minute we met, we hit it off great. He was a great keyboard player, great piano player, and he told the greatest dirty jokes ever. So as a teenager, he'd come in and tell me dad a joke, and they'd have a gas, then he'd tell me some jokes. And then he showed me harmony, started to unpack something from the inside, not the pretty colours of the kaleidoscope, but he'd tell me what all these chords were, because he knew him being an organist. And in fact, then I would those few years I had lessons with him, I would travel with him to the working men's clubs. I would go with him quite regular, sit there on a Saturday night. He'd be playing the organ, and I'd, you know, now and again get up myself and do a little bit. And so a little prodigy, I would come along with him. He then had another friend who had a little recording studio. So then I started doing little recording sessions for him, keyboard parts that needed to be done. Backing tracks was a big thing back then, you know. So that's how I first started playing piano. There's another 3 piano teachers after that, so I'll do another part of that. But that's how it initially all started for me, really, the love of playing. And as I got a little bit older, I formed a band with some friends I went to school with. But that's for another story. So that's how I first got into playing the piano. Still not really had that kind of love of jazz just yet. I just didn't understand it. I'd bought a John Coltrane record and it just seemed like something foreign to me at that point as a teenager. So there's a little introduction to how I started playing the piano. And I'll do a few more of these if people are interested. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now.